Can somebody tell me what Ineos is trying to build? And I'm not criticizing Ineos here, but the thing is, we have to look at what profiles we are targeting in the market. What am I talking about? Just look at the midfielders that we're looking at right now. We're looking at Anderson, Tonali, Wharton, and Baleba. They're different profiles, but the thing is, out of these players, some of them who are very different profiles are being put into one position, i.e., we're talking about Anderson or Wharton or Baleba being options for each other. And even Tonali is put in that mix. But in that list, you have a couple of eights who are just bombing forward eights. And then you have a player like Tonali who can play six, but at the same time, he would prefer to go up front. And then you have Adam Wharton in that same list who is a six. He's a conductor. He plays from deep. Now, with all these profiles that you're targeting, people are going to say, it doesn't matter to me how you play. But what I'm saying is, in this league, we've seen on multiple occasions, especially in the Champions League, when it comes to the bigger, the better teams, even in history, they always play well with the ball. And when you play well with the ball, you need players who can conduct, players who can calm the play down. We have one player just like that. We have Kobe right now. But we need a lot more of those players around him so that we can play that kind of football. Why am I saying this? You look at the way that City won the treble, by the way, in 22-23. In the first half of the season, they had a couple of runners and they had João Cancelo at left back. They had players who could run down, bomb down the flanks, and they were causing chaos. But what happened? Ultimately, the team that won them the Champions League for the first time and the only time in their history, by the way, has been a team that was purely possession-based. And what am I talking about possession-based? Their left back was Ake. Their centre back, or rather should I say CDM, was John Stones with Rodri beside him. And their wingers, that is the most important part. The wingers in that Champions League run for Man City were Jack Grealish and Riyad Mahrez. Midfield, obviously, Kevin De Bruyne, and they had Bernardo Silva playing. What this tells you is that in the Champions League, you always need technical players to succeed. You look at the PSG team, I don't even need to list it out for you. You look at the Bayern team. By the way, that Bayern game, if any of you watched the Real Madrid Bayern game, that whole game told you what Carrick's ideal system would look like. This is final form Carrick. What Bayern was playing at was final form Carrick. Because the kind of patterns that we try to play are similar. We try to do the same one-touch philosophy where we keep players close together and then they find their spaces, right? It's not any fixed system where this player plays here, this player plays there. Everybody kind of drops in here and there. But Bayern do it at the next level because they got the technical players. They have a system which they've worked with company for almost 2 years. And they have players just generally that are way, way better than ours. You look at world-class players like, in their own right, Michael Olise, in Harry Kane, in Kimmich, Manuel Neuer, and the list goes on. The players that play there have played in better teams before or are players who are really world-class. We don't have that right now. But the philosophy remains the same. They want to keep the ball. Barcelona, another team that want to keep the ball. And all the better teams in the world you see, not just now, but even in the past, always want to keep the ball. Now, the whole idea behind this is if you want to recruit a midfield, you don't want to just recruit a midfield that can play in the Premier League because purely buying runners gets you the Premier League maybe. But if you want to go for the treble, you want to go for any other trophy after that, you want to play technical players. And the technical players is so important because people are going to tell me, but they're runners. Because if they're runners, they're going to always run bomb down the flanks. They're going to be everywhere. Essentially, we're going to overwhelm the team. But that's where, let me ask you guys about what happens whenever a Premier League team plays one of PSG, Bayern or Barcelona. What happens is, a team like PSG have the runners. A team like Bayern can play possession pretty well. And Barcelona are the best at possession. The thing is, when those teams attack you, they attack you in such a way where they're not overwhelming their players. They're not rather pushing their players everywhere, but rather they play smart. They pick up positions where your players, the runners, can't really catch up. So think about it. If your players are compact, if they are in the places that they need to be, and everybody understands each other's movement, why would you need to maybe outrun the opposition? Because you think about it. If I start the ball at left back, let's say Nuno Mendes, for example, the speed at which Nuno Mendes can then move it to Vitinha, to Kvaratskhelia, into Dembele by pure passing is probably going to be faster than, let's say, at Man City, for example, you ask maybe Doku to run down the flank because you still haven't created a chance for Haaland yet. The ball hasn't gone to Haaland. Maybe Doku's running down the line, but at the same time, the rest of the players aren't catching up with the same intensity, with the same speed. And that is where the problem starts. Because when you're playing it with the ball, everybody knows where to be and people are covering positions while reaching there. But the ball always travels faster on the floor than one singular player trying to carry the ball forward. So if you have players that are fast enough, like example Cunha, like we could potentially get NDI, these players, they move the ball fast. And when they move it close together, the thing is the speed with which the ball moves kind of benefits us way more than hiring runners. It's the same thing in midfield as well. If you have an Adam Wharton who's controlling instead of maybe a Anderson and Tonali, for example, they're still good players, by the way, Anderson and Tonali. But the thing is, if you want to control a midfield, there's a mismatch. There's no control there. Because who's going to calm the play down when needed and who's going to speed it up when needed? Because we still don't have a conductor in that. Elliot Anderson's good on the turn, but I would say we already have our very own Elliot Anderson in the academy. Jim Thwaites. He plays just like Elliot Anderson if you watch. And what I'm saying is, Adam Wharton, there are other couple of players that have unique profiles which we can't get out there. Elliot Anderson is one of the most common profiles that you can find around in the Premier League because this is already a direct replacement for almost half the price in Matheus Fernandes. So why even bother going through the pain of paying almost 100 million for Anderson when we could get Matheus Fernandes instead? Now, having said all that, there are also different profiles. Like if you want your Bruno Guimaraes profile, you have João Gomes. And Adam Wharton's the only one you don't really find a direct replacement for in the Premier League because there is no conductor. The only conductors you can think about are Rodri. But, well, Rodri with his injury problems, he's not the same player anymore. So we're looking at really, you can't even think of any other dictators really from deep, right? Because Elliot Anderson, Yuri Tielemans, Matheus Fernandes, they all play almost a very similar way. And with that's very replaceable, but Adam Wharton dictating from deep is not so easy to replace. And this is where we have to think about what kind of style is Man United trying to play. Because if you ask me, all the best teams in history, that is Barcelona 2011, that is Bayern's, almost every team that Bayern has played, the City Centurions, the City Tribal team, and we can just go on with the list. All the best teams that have ever played in the world have always based it on technical possession-based players. People are going to say, but the eras have changed. Has the era really changed though? Because if we look at the teams that are still succeeding, we have PSG are an exception because they are a hybrid of both. And they are exceptionally good runners. They are exceptionally good at technical play. But you can still look at teams like Barcelona. You can still look at teams like Bayern Munich, who they still have a couple of runners, but it's still based on possession football. And the way that they exploit other teams is through possession football, is through moving the ball fast, is through getting to know that this player stands here, this player drops in here, while maybe a midfielder drops in at right winger. And that's the system with which they play. They kind of twist and turn things, and that's what they play into their advantage. Almost every day, you see Luis Enrique coming up with something new. First, it was launching the ball directly from the kickoff into the corner so that they kind of can push the team forward. Now you're seeing an innovative way of playing with throw-ins. When Nuno Mendes kind of launches the ball into Vitinha, who's running onto it, and suddenly they kind of create, as everybody was calling it, a false counter-attack. And suddenly, you're through to Dembele. It's these kind of innovations that come with not just playing physical, not trying to play as a runner. Because, guys, did you guys watch the PSG and Liverpool game? In that game, there was a 6-minute period where Liverpool didn't even touch the ball. And what happened at the end of it? Kvaratskhelia scored. And this is what European teams do. This is what teams who keep the ball do. And well, we already have a manager who wants to play that style of football. Maybe not as dominant as Company or and Luis Enrique, but we can already see the way that we play. Even the Bournemouth game where we drew, the first half should have been a 3-0 because we were dominating the ball. Bournemouth had no chances. It was purely us trying to create, us trying to take the game to Bournemouth. We were unlucky. And our players were not good enough to break down those lines. The problem we still do have in midfield, by the way, as good as Kobe and Casemiro are, Casemiro is not press resistant anymore. And that is a big problem with it. Every time that there are players that kind of surround him, a Newcastle per se, suddenly Casemiro looks lost. He looks like the player that we saw a couple of seasons ago where he looks almost useless. And when we don't have somebody to come off the bench to replace him when he's struggling like this is when things get 10 times worse. When we have an Ugarte, that's why we lose to Newcastle, which is why we have to be careful against Leeds as well on Saturday. But the thing is, you have to look at the kind of style of football that United are trying to play. Because there's one option where we go with Adam Wharton and we go with another midfielder. Maybe that could be a one-over runner. And then we go with an Iliman NDI, we go with Lewis Kelly at left back. And suddenly you're building a proper possession team that could really challenge for big things. Now, on the other side, you go with a team like maybe with Anderson, with Tonali, with Yan Diomande. And suddenly you're looking at a lot of runners. You're looking at people who can beat their man. But when it comes to really keeping a ball, not in the group stages of Champions League, by the way. In group stages of Champions League, you can get by with the physical rough housing and all that. But when it gets to the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, when you want to come to the semi-finals, you really, really need to have possession. You need to have technical players who can really find a solution when things are tight. Or rather, when teams like Arsenal drop a low block, how are you going to deal with that? When Atletico Madrid drop a low block and they counter you kind of like what they did with Barca, what are you going to do? How are you going to react in those situations? And that is when our team is going to be tested, which is why we need a hybrid. But at the same time, when we need a hybrid of players, we need players who have performed on a more consistent basis, which is why we go for possession-based players, because it has worked in the past. It's not going to fail all of a sudden because it is a working formula. So, end of the day, what I'm advocating for, what this whole 13 minutes has been about, basically we need to go towards more of a possession-based team, because even possession-based team can absolutely blitz anyone in the Premier League. If we are already blitzing people in the Premier League, then add more control, add more possession to this team, and suddenly we're dominating anybody. Next season, City look out, Liverpool look out, Arsenal look out, Chelsea look out, and the rest of the Premier League look out. Because when we have control, what are you going to do? And the only thing you can do is sit back. But then, in that case, we're going to completely annihilate you because we got controllers. We got players who can absolutely destroy you on the wings as well. Now, if you want to push us back, then we're going to counter you. It's very simple. And when you have a couple of styles of play in the same team, that's when you're ready to dominate. So, what do you guys think? What kind of team do you want to build? What do you think about Ineos' strategy? As good as it may be, there are a couple of flaws which we don't know really what's going to happen with it. And yeah, comment that all down below, and I'll see you on the next one.